Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about measuring marketing ROI, and we've got a really insightful guest with us here today. But first of all, I'm one of your hosts, Claire Daniels, CEO of Trio Media.
And as always, I'm Manny Singh, CEO of Bobble Digital.
Hello everyone, I'm Anushna Kanyan, CEO of Burnwy.
And I'm really delighted to introduce to everyone today Mark Taylor from eSalesHub. Hello, Mark.
Thank you very much for having me on. Great to be here today.
You're welcome. So we've invited Mark on today. So Mark, you've got a really exciting business, which we'd like to know more about. And it's something that you've created through having your own struggles in terms of measuring effectiveness of marketing ROI. And I would like to get onto that. But first of all, for our listeners, just tell us a little bit more about you. It would be good to understand your background and kind of what's brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. My background has always been in marketing. I've been very fortunate to work with some great brands like Hilton, Hotels, Virgin, Halfords. But my challenge has always been connecting that online click to offline sale. And it was funny because in my first job, which is of course from Regal Hotels, we didn't even have the internet back then. I'm that old. And so I think I still remember the first day that I think I was about 24, I got my first laptop, and we actually had this thing called email that we started to use. And really my career has always been working for service-based companies. And the thing with service-based companies is you consume their product, offline. It's not like you're buying a pair of trainers, you want a pair of yellow trainers, therefore you want a size 8. It's relatively easy to make that purchase online. With a service, you've got to consume it yourself offline. And that's really where my career has been. And I've been very lucky to have some great mentors along the way that have taught me how to run a business. So not just from a marketing point of view, but also from a how to make a business profitable, how to make it successful. And, a watershed moment for me was the 2nd of April, 2013, when I was downloading my sales results. I was on holiday at the time with my family. I wanted to see how well our sales results were doing. And they were just disastrous because the company I was working for at the time had operational difficulties. And it was such a frustration that's when I decided that I was going to create eSalesHub, because I'd worked on 3 different private equity ventures. I got to a stage where I had confidence in what I could do as a person and the value that I could bring to a business. And I thought, right, I'm going to do it myself. Wife thought I was absolutely crazy. We're on holiday for a start off, so I couldn't resign straight away.
But don't you feel that's when all the best ideas come, because you've switched off and you've relaxed, and then you're like, I'm going to go back as a new person. I'm going to do all of this.
My team hate it when I go away on holiday, because I take a book. So I'll always take something and learn something whilst away, and then I'll come back with all these brilliant ideas. So the first day back from holiday, everybody kind of cowers in the corner thinking, oh my God, what's Mark going to come up with now? But also it's experiencing different things on holiday. You get a chance to go to places you wouldn't normally go to and relax. And I think when you run your own business, and this is one of the things that I think everybody should run their own business and understand actually how difficult it is. It's not as easy as you think.
Yeah. When
you work for a company, when I worked in marketing, if I go back to my first ever position at Chorus Hotels, I was marketing executive. We had a partnership with Lotus Cars, so I get to go to Lotus every now and again, got involved in their motorsport program. We were sponsoring them. It was all great. We had a finance team, didn't really know what they did. We had a HR team, didn't really know what they did, didn't really care, because I just did marketing, and I was, got to drive Lotuses every now and again. So it's only when you run your own business do you really understand, what you've got to do and the hard work you've got to put in, but also the success you get out of it. That, even if I didn't get paid to do what I did, I'd still do it because I love what I do. And that's what I always say to people is find something you love, because you will make it the best because you love it. The money will follow you. You just got to find something you absolutely love that you're willing to put everything into, and you'll get the most out of it.
So tell us what that thing is. Tell us about eSalesHub.
So I set up eSalesHub 7 years ago, and it was out of my frustration of being able to not track, I would say, phone calls from the internet is where it first started. And where it first actually started was in 2009. I was working for Halfords Auto Centres. I was their commercial director, and I remember I was in a branch. And I could hear a phone call. The customer phoned up saying, oh, hi, I'm online right now. I want to book my car in for an MOT today, but you've got no slots. The way the internet or the site worked at the time is that you could only book 2 days in advance. So you couldn't book within the next 48 hours. And the mechanic behind the desk said, yeah, no problem at all. I've got a slot at 5:30. And I'm thinking straight away, that's revenue that I'm not getting, that I'm not attributing to my sales. how can I let this happen? So ever since then, I've been trying to work out how you can connect an offline sale to an online click. And when we first set up eSalesHub, I would say it was more of a consultancy. So I was working with a locksmith company, I was working with a gas installation company, generating leads for them, trying to work out how I could connect that online click to an offline sale when the call, when the transaction comes through the phone line. And initially, I'd written an algorithm to do the process using Google data and phone switch data. And I was doing it manually. So it would take me about a week to actually physically match the search term, so the actual keyword, not the match term, to the actual call. And then to establish, was the call actually a sale? Was it a quote? Because what people don't understand is you might generate 4,000 calls from Google Ads, but not all 4,000 are sales calls, and not all 4,000 are going to be sales themselves. So you've really got to understand the difference between the different types of calls that you're driving, because you could be spending a load of money on Google Ads and driving customer service calls, which are having no commercial benefit to your company at all. So for the first 2 years, it was very much, I was trying to work out an algorithm and how would the tech look. I was then very lucky that I met Andy Wigglesworth, who is our CTO, is an amazing coder who took my vision and coded it. I'd love to say I'm great at coding, but I think every time I get involved, I break stuff. So I think he's learnt for the past few years not to let me anywhere near coding. And version 1 was a very simple matching tool. So it matched the keyword to the call. And then over time, we built more functionality to now we use artificial intelligence to actually analyze a call. And the importance of that is, as I said, not every call is a sales call. So if you can find the keyword that is actually driving sales offline for you versus keywords that are just driving quotes or sales, or let alone customer service calls, you can optimize your media campaign to drive a massive, a significant improvement in result. We have clients who, and one of them is British Gas. We work with a Dino brand. They get a 50% conversion from the leads that are generated from their Dino.com website. Now, 50% conversion off a lead, you must be crazy. They're used to kind of 9, 10, 11%, 2% if they're lucky. I remember when I was at Halfords, we were happy with 10% conversion, but it's because we're able to understand those keywords that actually drive the right type of behavior online that lead to a sale rather than the wrong type of behavior that leads to customer service. So we're now turnover just over 2.2 million. We've got 16 staff, and I'm delighted to tell you that we've just recently received investment from Maven Capital, 1.65 million investment to take us from.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much. Take us from the 16 employees we have now to 42, and really build on what we've created, because it's not just sales. We also use our AI to analyze recruitment as well, because what we're finding is we drive sales leads for people, and then they'd slow it down because, I've got too many sales now, I need to hire some more people. So we've repurposed our AI to analyze online applications with offline payroll data. So we can analyze, again, the good sources of where you're actually hiring people versus just generating applications. So for me, the benefits of AI really are, it's just doing really big, complex maths equations so much quicker. So that weak process I've just mentioned, using AI takes 0.2 of a second. It's actually quite depressing when I think back to, it used to take me a week to work this one out. I used to be so proud at the end of the week, think, yay, I've done the analysis of 1 week's worth of calls for one client in a week. And now we do it every 10 minutes for every single client. It's just, being able to do that amount of analysis that quickly in that detail, us moving into AI 2 years ago was a real game changer for us.
Did you ever see yourself working in tech, when you're in these marketing roles at other organizations, essentially you're at quite a, fast growing, innovative tech company now?
It's funny you should say that. I actually worked for Microsoft for a year and didn't enjoy it. And the reason I didn't enjoy it was because I think with a technology company, a lot of it is around, or what I found at the time was a lot of it was around, building something and then testing it on customers. And it wasn't really that innovative, if you get what I mean. And it was a very big, clunky corporation. It's very hard to have an impact. Whereas with eSalesHub, I generally started off trying to solve a problem. And that's what I find with the technology that works that's highly profitable is you're actually solving a problem that somebody has. And I've got a lot of enjoyment out of actually solving that problem and showing clients the return on investment that they are getting. And here's the few changes that you could make to turbocharge your sales. And then when you actually see it happen and you see the client's reaction to, blimey, we never knew that happened. We've made this change, and suddenly we're generating an extra £4 million in sales. That to me, that's the enjoyment part of the business that I didn't really get, when I was working for Microsoft previously.
And so, Mark, what's the vision for the company? You've secured investment. What's the goal?
I think we're just scratching at the very edge of artificial intelligence. We've got a relationship with Sheffield University, who are in the top 5 leaders in the education sector for artificial intelligence and machine learning. And what amazes me is that AI is a predictive model. The more data you put into it, the more it can predict an outcome. So even Amazon are using it to predict, I don't know if you've seen on the rugby, depending on the kicker, where the ball is actually going to go through the posts, right? And so I think for us, we're using artificial intelligence to very much predict the outcome of your media spend, where are you better spending your media spend to get the greatest return. And I think where we're going to move is understand that a lot more. And certainly from our point of view, we've started to look at compliance applications. So, a company that sells maybe insurance, maybe they're taking inbound calls of people renewing or cancelling or actually taking up the product, trying to listen to all of those calls to make sure, you're compliantly selling is actually very, very tough. So if you can use AI to actually analyze your calls to make sure you are compliant or to fish out those calls that aren't as compliant, from a trading point of view, again, it's just another application of our AI analytics tool. But our core business is, and we always start off in lead generation, and we will always have that as part of the business. So we pay for Google, you pay per lead is our proposition, where smaller companies can take advantage of our AI and just pay per lead. We get enterprises like Benson Sabeds, Europe Car, British Gas who license our technology because they want to use it to manage their own lead generation campaigns. And then from a recruitment point of view, actually rolling out and actually growing our recruitment clients. We sent a client live 3 weeks ago, and they got a 400% increase in applications within a week. And that's for me the power of AI. It's yes, it is a complex calculation at the end of the day, but actually the uses of it are just, from a marketing point of view, absolutely amazing stuff that I just couldn't do 10 years ago, which can now.
Yeah. And I've got to say, I think the system's amazing, the call tracking side of things. So we started talking a couple of weeks ago about you coming on the podcast, and, I was really interested to find out more about what it was that you do. We sat and had a demo of the system, and I also pulled in Manny because, from both of us running digital agencies, in the UK, having a way to measure those calls is just something we've not had before. So when we're reporting on effectiveness of marketing and of advertising spend, and we go, yep, you've maybe had 100 phone calls this month from this campaign, but we actually weren't able to go any further from that in terms of, we could check through Google if the calls have been missed or answered, but once they've been answered, was it a lead, or actually were people calling up customer services or support? We work with a lot of tech companies, and they get a lot of phone calls from their ads, and it's been that niggling feeling of, are these people phoning them because they need support? But actually all we can do is report on that number as a lead. And so being able to bring in that functionality and use the power of the AI to go, well, we can see and categorize the difference between a lead and a technical call and a customer service call is groundbreaking, for our industry. And I'm pleased to say that we've then partnered with you off the back of it, because we see such value in the system that you're offering. Manny, I know you've had a look at it as well.
Yeah, I think with the type of clients, and anyone who's listening to this podcast right now will know that we're coming out of a lockdown. We're not going to go into lockdown. Local businesses are coming back into it, and what was predominantly relied on just online conversions, either a contact form because of how we've all had to work from home. People are going to start going back to the offices. Offices are going to open up. People are going to have to use their phones again, and it's going to change the way we work. We work with a lot of B2B based services, organizations and clients, and measuring that element of it is key, because when we're running, like you said, PPC campaigns, we are tracking the call element of that, and that is increasing, and we've seen that trend with the data of clients that have physical offices that are going back to actual working from their offices, they're getting more calls through to the offices as, you know, consumers, other businesses out there get more confidence in calling local businesses to support local businesses. And you should right now, if you're a local business, you should be calling them. But tools like eSalesHub, once our lockdown platform, really helped us, you know, identify that. And I know we're going through a trial right now with eSalesHub to track our Google My Business in terms of who's calling us, because we are going back to physical offices. I mean, you can see us on the podcast in an actual boardroom, but we will be here permanently from the 1st of June. So it's understanding how do we transition from that, you know, online to offline and bridging that gap all the way through.
And Anush, from your point of view, you know, when we start incorporating call tracking into wider marketing metrics, obviously we've talked over the past few episodes about strategy for people listening, but actually when it comes down to the type of tools that we should be using to measure marketing effectiveness, I'm just curious, obviously specifically from that video angle, what are the tools that you're using and the conversations you're having with your clients in terms of measuring the effectiveness of the campaigns?
Yeah, so I would say in general, there are a lot of ways, of course, to measure the success. But the most important one is, of course, measuring the success with the goal you have put in front of you beforehand. So whenever you know the goal, there are three main goals, of course, when we are talking about video, because you can attract customers, you can engage them, and you are going at the end, let's say, force them to make a decision. So if you already know the goal that you are putting in front of you, that's the best way to measure it. And you can do it in any way. Like you can count how many views you have. You can, have social shares. You can have engagement. You can, of course, ask always feedbacks from your customers, from the people who viewed your video. But the best way to measure, to see like how many sales you have, of course. Like, do they actually was interested after watching your video of your product or not? That's maybe the most important one.
Yeah. And I'm really keen on that note about the initial goal and objective of the campaign, to understand, Mark, the challenges that people first come to you with, you know, because I know from conversations we've had that actually the call tracking elements can then go off in a number of different directions. So what's that initial objective that people come to you that they're looking to resolve?
I think for marketing and digital people nowadays, they are so measured. And I think they're the most measured department in any business. And I think the challenge people have is incremental sales. Because let's be honest, working in operations is tough. You know, there are easier ways to earn a living. Go work in marketing, right? So the marketing guys
the colouring in team.
Exactly. The marketing guys and digital guys, they're always going to have a lot of pressure, because nowadays, you know, you spend £1, you've got to get £10 back, or spend £1, you've got to get £5 back, right? That never used to happen 20 years ago. It was, as you say, the colouring in team. And I think it's proving to people that actually my marketing works, my strategy works. And there's not a single client we've ever met that we've ever run a trial with that hasn't got a great marketing strategy. It's just their ability to measure the pound notes off the back end of it. That's what's limiting them. And often what we find is clients come to us with is my PPC working? You know, have I got the right ad campaign? Look, I can see calls are coming in here. I can see sales are coming in over here, but I can't connect the two together, particularly when you've got a branch network. So take your point about GMB. It's quite an interesting one, because the second reason people generally come to us is, so we don't think we get any calls, but I was in a branch the other day and I heard a call. Can we just put a number on GMB and just sort of Google My Business and just see what calls we're getting? And there is a retailer, I won't mention their name, who their operations director was convinced that they got no calls into their branches. They're actually getting 40,000 a month into their branches. 38,000 came from Google My Business. Now, what was interesting was the view of the business was, well, we don't publish a telephone number, so no one calls us. The problem you've got with Google My Business is the number one call to action is to call, because Google's own stats say that 70% of people call on a mobile device from local search. What's the first thing you come across on local search? Ad. Second thing is the Google My Business entry. So generally what we find is clients come to us wanting to know, what is my return on investment in pound notes that I'm getting from, you know, my Google ads or my media campaign or my GMB. And it's quite interesting, because it's then taken that information back to the business to show, actually, it's not necessary that we need to spend more marketing money, but there's more efficiencies that we can get in the business. So, for example, with one client, we put an IVR on their Google My Business entry, so that press 1 to talk to store, press 2 to buy, press 3 to buy something else. The buy directions actually goes to the telesales call center because they're good at selling over the phone. They've got a 40% conversion over the phone, whereas the store, they weren't converting anything because they were just saying to the customer, look, come into store. Yeah, but I want to buy this over the phone. That's why I'm calling you. Oh, we don't have a way to take payment. Really, really sorry. You'll have to come into store. That's an £8 million incremental sales opportunity. They don't have to spend any more money. They've just got to divert the call into the right department that's made for converting on the phone. And without our data, they wouldn't have known about that and would have been missing £8 million. Now, £8 million is quite a lot of money. And from Google My Business, which was something that they never thought they were getting any calls from, suddenly, right, we need to be spending some money on Google My Business because, we've never even touched our entries for like the past 5 years. What do we do? And there's a lot you can do with Google My Business now that will actually increase your call volume. You can optimize it a lot more than you could do a couple of years ago. And it's just discovering those opportunities that it's not all about spending more money. It's about getting more out of what you've got. But you as a marketing person showing to your business, actually, my strategy works. It's working. Here's where it's falling down, and this is the improvements we need to make. And one of the things that we find is it's not, particularly because we deal with services, a lot of people convince themselves it's price as to why they can't convert someone. What we generally find is availability of the product. So, the customer wants to buy now. They're phoning up. That's a red hot lead. I'm phoning up and calling. I'm not phoning you for chit chat. I'm phoning you because I want to buy something. I want to transact with you. And it's generally availability of product. And that astounds people. What do you mean it's not price? It's what we just need more product to sell. Yeah. And that's how they can generate more sales. So it really gives them insight into the operational workings of the business in real time, which, we know that other systems that people use could take them 6 months to find out what we can find out in a day.
Yeah. And do you find that it's quite cyclical in terms of, people start out, like you said, people come to you, they have a marketing strategy, and then it's how to measure it, and you give them the tools to measure it. But then from those tools, from what they learn from that, they go back and adjust their marketing strategy. So do you find that it does actually change the route the business is going in based on the data you're providing them?
Yeah, the great thing about online is you can test. And I always have a control group, because you're always going to get someone in the business who says, yeah, but is that seasonal or is that just a freak occurrence? And then, test different theories to then work out what your optimum mix is, because we always find that whenever we send anybody live, there's always something they're not expecting because it's real live data. With a focus group, they're people that may actually interact with your products at some point. But when you're dealing with customers, they're actually calling you wanting to interact with your business. That's way better, more reliable data to get feedback on. And so what we tend to find is that the business will grow over time. So it'll start with, right, where am I now? What change do I need to make? Right, let's make a few changes. Right, what does that do? Make a few more changes. What does that do? And so for some of our clients, it's a 2-3 year journey of making these changes to turbocharge their business. We've got a healthcare client, and we've literally increased their applications by 51% this year. Prior to that, last year was 100%. So you can imagine we're putting 3 times as many applications, but their hire rate has gone from 1% to 10%. They've had a recruitment issue for 10 years. They now don't have as big a recruitment issue as they had before because we've been able to find them the applicants that work. But it's taken a lot of work from their side. And one of the things that I say is you've got to have a desire for growth. If you haven't got that genuine desire for growth, you're not going to change your business to take advantage of the data insights that we give you. And this business literally changed the way they recruited their staff. They almost had like an internal recruitment team, almost like an agency. And that's how they could take advantage of all the opportunities we were giving them. We can tee it up. It's down to you as a client to take on board those opportunities and make the most of them, really.
Mark, I'm sure our listeners would love to know, how did you find your own first clients?
How did I find my own first client? So it was actually somebody that I used to work with, that was our CEO at the last company I worked at, and he had a great network. And so he got me in front of 2 or 3 clients initially. And that's how we won our first client. Our first client actually, and they are quite dear to me in a way, is a client called Mr. Electric, who were a franchise or are a franchise of electricians. They're owned by Neighbourly, which is America's fourth largest franchise operation, but they're over in the UK. And Philip was actually my first client. He ran Mr. Electric in the UK. They had about 7 or 8 franchisees, and we grew up with them. And they were, it was great because you're dealing with a man in van operation. So some of them, have sophisticated marketing because they're franchises. Some of them, weren't as sophisticated with the marketing, but needed our help. And it was a great way to cut our teeth. But it was personal recommendation that got me probably, I would say, our first 10 clients, because a lot of people at the start were, no, can't be done. I've tried this myself. Can't be done. So how can you do it? Sat in an office in the People's Republic of Yorkshire in Doncaster. How can you do what I'm trying to do? And I always remember that after about 3 years of being in business, we were offered investment by quite a large PLC, and it was quite a big deal at the time. And I met the global CEO, who was very, very keen, and then I went to meet the UK CEO, and he basically just turned around to me and said, "So you know a little bit more about Google than I do," and that was it. And I thought, right, this is going to be a tough sell. And that I would say the first couple of years, it really was convincing people we knew what we were doing, but with a little bit of evidence, if you get what I mean. Ever since we moved over to AI, people get it so much quicker because they understand AI a lot more, or understand the concept of it. So it really was plugging away. And I would say our first couple of clients, it was more a consultancy thing, if you get what I mean. But it was tough going. And I just remember the first 2 years, all I was doing was constantly meeting, networking and meeting and networking, to get those first clients. And then when you win a client, obviously you want them to be profitable. That wasn't always the case. I would do stuff for free. I would do stuff at loss making just to get that experience to kind of prove our tech.
It's that old saying, everyone sees the iceberg, but not what's underneath. So no, I actually value that. It'd be interesting to get your views on, because this topic is about measuring marketing ROI. There's so many businesses and listeners out there that'll be listening to this. I want to kind of get some insights and walk away with particular aspects in terms of what they can be doing to start implementing key elements that you could maybe recommend to particular businesses. Consider that I guess most of our listeners vary between, other agencies through to small local or, even national businesses. If you're just coming out of a pandemic and you're just restarting up, and we just talked then about, testing and putting elements there, and you're worried about, investing into marketing because you're not sure about the results you're going to get. And I think that is the biggest objective that people have when it comes to marketing is, how do I measure that? Will this deliver return to that? What would your advice be to those kind of businesses right now in terms of that, looking to make that difficult first step into actually investing into marketing or digital marketing and convincing them that the results will be there to deliver?
It's interesting. The first thing I would recommend is to establish your sales funnel. So how many leads? What is your conversion? What is your actual sales funnel? And the reason I say that is every business owner will have a metric in their mind. And it could be appointments. I know that if I get 2 appointments, I'm going to close one of those into a sale. But it's establishing that, if you like, that return on investment model, that sales funnel. So how many leads do I need to get an appointment? How many appointments do I get into a sale? Once you've got those metrics in your mind, you can then start measuring that sales funnel process. And okay, you can't measure every single step of the way possibly, but you will get a feeling based on what the most important KPI to you is as to actually how well that program's going. So we've got some clients that literally it's all on their lead volume. So I know that if I'm getting 10 leads a day, I know that 5 of those will go to a quote. I know that I will get 1 sale from that quote. So therefore they're focused on that top line lead gen, if you like, number. Then we've got clients who very much focus on an appointment. So I know that, what my ratio is on appointment. And therefore, if you then know what your average invoice value that you get is, you can work out a very simple return on investment model. So, right, let's say my what we normally work on an ROI model is we always look at marketing doesn't want to cost more than 10% of the actual sale, because if it costs more than 10%, I generally don't think you're probably going to make a profit, because when you take into account all your operating costs and everything else. So just to keep it simple, let's say the product's worth 100 quid. You've got a tenner budget to be able to spend on generating that sale. So let's say your conversion is 1 and 3. Right, I've got £3.30 to be able to generate a lead or a point of interest or whatever you're going to measure. So you can work back the metrics that way and very, very quickly understand what's working, what isn't. And the clients that I think get the most out of our solution are the ones that know their numbers. The clients that don't know their numbers, that's where we step in and actually help them and actually measure their campaign for them so that they know I'm actually getting a return on investment on this. Because the one thing I've learned in my career is incremental sales. There's no point paying for a sale that you were already going to get through a free channel. I always used to have this discussion about putting adverts in the Daily Mail. When I was at Hilton, we put an advert in the Daily Mail, we get £500,000 worth of sales, and it becomes a drug, and you keep advertising in the Daily Mail, keep getting £500,000 and actually realise that, well, we've got a database of Daily Mail readers, why don't we just direct mail them? And it never worked. We had to keep advertising. So I think it's key to get those metrics in place and then start small, because if you don't know what your figures are, it's very, very easy to blow your budget. And I've done that. I've been guilty of doing that before, of going mad thinking, right, I know my numbers, I know what I need, and then blowing the budget within the first week. For me, it's finding the things that work for you. So being able to track and measure those different sources. So talk about Google My Business. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs you time is what it costs you, but actually you can generate a lot from it. But knowing that the time you invest is giving you that return, you'll do more of it. And that's why I think the measurement part of it is so key, that once you've established your metrics, without being able to measure it, you're pretty much shooting in the dark, and you could be spending a lot of time doing something, even if it's for free, that actually doesn't yield you any benefit whatsoever. So we started an example, social media campaign for ourselves. And because we've been measuring it to the nth degree, we know that it's triggering existing.
How have you been measuring that? Just to come in on that. So if you're doing a social media campaign, there'll be a lot of businesses out there doing a social media campaign. Are you using in-platform tools? What metrics are you looking at?
So real hard sales, it sounds nuts, but so what we'll do is we'll assign a unique telephone number to Facebook, to Twitter, to LinkedIn. We'll also have different messages on the different platforms at different times, so we can measure what they're responding to.
You're actually putting the number in the actual call to action, the actual text ad within the Facebook ad post itself.
So yesterday, as an example, we had 10 leads from Facebook. 3 of them came through the phone. 3 that came through the phone were between 5:30 and 7 o'clock last night. One of those leads that came from Facebook on the phone also completed the form fill just before he called us.
So what metrics are you taking from the in-platform dashboard from Facebook? Because Facebook Business Manager, everyone knows, you manage Facebook Messenger, Instagram. What are you doing? What are you looking at to help you understand, are you targeting the right audience? Are you, getting the right click-through rate? Are you getting the right engagement with that post? Is that messaging working for you? What metrics are you looking at specifically within the dashboard?
It's funny you should say that. None.
Wow.
We don't, because I go back to, if it's generating leads, that's the point for me as a business owner. If we've got it to work, it's because we're measuring the leads that are coming out of it, if that makes sense. So yes, what we do is we create an audience based on the traffic we already get. So I'm not creating an audience from scratch, as it were. We're basing it off an existing audience we've created. And we're then measuring, so how many people we're getting on the landing page, what that landing page is converting into, which is, again, our own data. And then how much of those leads then actually physically turn into sales. So on our CRM system, we track every source of every lead. So whether it's paid, whether it's organic, whether it's Facebook organic, whether it's paid Facebook. And then essentially what we're doing is making sure that we're getting a return on investment. Go back to our numbers. We would pay 700 quid for a sale. We're now paying £33. Have I looked at the Facebook dashboard in the last 6 months? No. It's all been through our own data, because I'm interested in sales. I'm not interested in so much as impressions, if you get what I mean. It's the outcome I'm interested in rather than the audience itself. And the other thing we found with Facebook is the wider you make the audience, the better. I don't know why. because Facebook enables you. The great thing about it is you can target at a real defined level. Whenever we've done that, it's almost like we've strangled it. So we've actually, let off the brakes a little bit, and we actually generate more sales, not just leads, but more sales off the back of it by doing that.
It is the opposite of what it used to be. Whereas before you used to break down Facebook campaigns into granular individual campaigns, and now it's the algorithm switched to say, no, reach and target more audience. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's completely different, where you've got to be as niche as you need to be to target that specific audience. Yes, you're paying higher, but the reason is because it's like you said, Google My Business is a free tool. Google Analytics is a free tool, anyone listening. And it's that key point, it's time. You have to invest your time to look at the data, not just from platforms like, Facebook Business Manager, Google Analytics, but you need to be creating your own internal systems to measure it.
It's really funny you should say that, because we changed our website, and we changed the navigation at the top. Changed it on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, no leads. Or I think we got 1, maybe 2. We usually get 10. I didn't need to look at Facebook. I knew we had a problem. So we changed the button to free trial, went back up a bit, changed it to free demo. We got about 20% improvement over the previous website. I didn't look at any Facebook data. I just went into, as you said, the Google Analytics data to look at the search. I could see that they were stopping. They weren't clicking on the free demo or free trial button. And it's just a change in words from changing it from free trial to free demo. And we just tested it to see what would happen. And we get 20% improvement just by changing the words.
This is what I feel like most businesses struggle with, because they'll be running so many multiple platforms, video, as Anush will know. And I always find that video is the hardest to kind of measure, because it's, as you said, Anush, it's 3 goals. It's raising awareness, engaging with them, or getting them to make a decision. And there's so many different platforms out there, whether you're doing Google ads or, Facebook. Clients then just look at in-platform data. You've got to look at the wider picture.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying really tied into what Anush was saying earlier around the, looking at the overall objectives. And Anush, how frequently are people coming to you with the objective of sales, but they know they want video to be part of that? And, what tools do you then bring into place to help show the effectiveness of what you've done?
Usually when customers are coming to us, the only problem is they really don't know why they want to use the video, because they usually want the sale to be their first target, but not always the sales is what they need to target. Because first of all, maybe they don't yet know their clients, and they can't just, let's say, sell their product to people who don't know their product, like from the first glance. They need to start understanding the product. Like, you need to explain what is the product about, and then sell them the product. So basically, at the first stage, when the customers are coming, I'm always suggesting to not go with promo videos at the first. On the first video. If you don't have any videos, first one is explainer, because you need to give the understanding of your video, of your product, give them the advantages that you have, give them like whole knowledge, for example, which kind of problems you are solving for them. And then for the third or fourth video, start selling, let's say, talking about your product in actual way, like what is it giving to them. And promo videos also, when you're choosing to do a promo video, you need to always concentrate on one topic, because a lot of customers are trying to give a lot of information on one video, but it's not always right. You need to just concentrate on one thing. And of course, at the end of your video, always have only one call to action, because your customers need to take any actions after watching the video. So one call to action can help them to make a decision really quickly.
But it comes back to all the wider tools. If you're doing video advertising, it's the key elements you can really track is if there's a contact form or call to action or a sale transaction on your website. But that's less likely to happen from video. It's more likely to happen within platforms like, Facebook, if you are using video, or different platforms out there that say display as video. YouTube is great in terms of pre-roll. And we all know that social media is becoming very, very video focused in terms of the creative people need to use in terms of short term, 5 to 10 seconds. But it's using the tools like eSales at eSalesHub. How many people are calling into the business because they've got the brand awareness from that? And I think a lot of businesses, and anyone's listening to this, needs to understand that there's so many multiple elements to this to track, that it's not just one element in terms of like, as you said, you're running Facebook campaigns, but you're not even looking at the in-platform data. As an agency, I'm like, well, okay, why is that? And that's quite interesting. But you have your own internal data and you're looking at Google Analytics and you're looking at so many others to say, no, we know Facebook's working. We don't really care about the impressions or the engagement rate. We know this is our audience. We put it into Facebook and we'll track it offline.
But also the switch on, switch off test, I always find is really, really useful. That if ever you want to be convinced about something, switch it off. It's brave, but switch it off for a week, see what happens. And I think one of the things I learned when I was at Virgin Active is invest in your brand. So although you can't necessarily measure the impact of video, it will have an impact. And if you stop doing it, you'll feel it. And even at Virgin Active, you think, oh, you got the Virgin brand, must have been easy. No, because no one even knew what Virgin Active was. They thought it was, I don't know, some kind of yoga thing. I don't know, but it was a chain of gyms. And we still had to invest in the Virgin brand to tell people we existed. And you can only wring so much out of direct response. And if you're not investing in your brand, you're not building something for the future. And what we were finding at Virgin is the less we invest in the brand, our direct response channels were just going down. And the more we invested in the brand, we probably get a 20, 30% uplift by investing in the brand. And we were doing it, in traditional methods like billboards, press advertising, stuff like that. But we could see the impact that it had on our direct response channels. And one of the ones, it was Europcar actually, it was about 2 years ago, we suddenly had a massive spike in sales. And we're looking at each other going, oh, the campaign's working well this month. What's happened? And it was getting ridiculous to the point of view of where has this come from? And so we phoned up Europcar, said, are you guys doing anything different? Oh yeah, we've got radio adverts. And it was the radio adverts that were actually driving the PPC campaign and the online campaign. So they couldn't measure the impact directly from the ad, but we could see it in all the channels. And the spike was amazing. So for me, you've got to keep investing in your brand. You can't just keep ringing a direct response channel every time, because without that investment in your brand, you just won't be investing for the future, and your direct response channels won't be as effective as they could be.
And what I'm hearing from you, Mark, is ultimately it's always going to come down to sales. No matter what it is you're doing, that's your key metric. So if all this other activity is going on, is there more money in the bank? Is there more deals coming through? And I'm curious to know, with the experience you've got, working in a lot of big brands to where you are now, if that's ever changed, or has that always been very much what you've seen as the key goal?
I've always focused on driving sales in my career because, when the chips are down and the finger gets pointed at you, well, I drive X, I drive Y. We actually measure our gross profit as a business every 10 minutes, which can get quite addictive. And also upsets the wife when I'm on holiday. I'm updating our gross
10 minutes.
Yeah, every 10 minutes we measure our gross profit. Yeah. It literally. Anis Dadeweli, who works for us, he's an ex-Googler. He's our head of client revenue. He now behaves like me because he now updates every 10 minutes, and it is like a fix. It's like a game. And when I was a kid, I grew up with a ZX Spectrum. You probably guys have never heard of that. 48K. That's a lot of power for a computer. But I was a gamer when I was a kid, and actually beating the numbers and having a set of numbers that I can then regularly see kind of plays to my gaming side of my brain, as it were. And yes, every 10 minutes, you have a bad Saturday, a bad Sunday, it does put you in a mood. Ask my wife. But at the same time,
we've gone from marketing to the stock market in like 60 seconds.
But it also, for our clients, they can see what happens every 10 minutes. And so if you're sat in a marketing office, you're not in front of the customer. And that was always one of my frustrations. I was always one step removed from the customer, and that's why I quite liked to get out in front of customers. It's funny, one of my old CEOs, John Cleland, made me go out, and made me go and see branches and go and be with customers because I'd learn more. And I think, like I say, as a business owner, I'm very focused on sales because, I've got a responsibility to my staff, my team, my shareholders, me, my wife, everybody else, to pay them, make sure we're in a profitable company, because that's why we're in business, is for sales at the end of the day. But we're also in business to help the sales of our clients. And I think one of my frustrations is when I've been in companies when I've not been able to connect the sale, that end point. That's when I've got very, very frustrated. And I think when you're in e-commerce or when you're in services, I think e-commerce, it's relatively easy to measure that because you can see the transaction. But then if you work for a retailer, a lot of your transactions walk into store. How do you capture that? And likewise with servicing, it's an offline transaction. How do you capture that? And I think once you can start tracking sales, your mindset changes. Mine did. When I first got involved in marketing, it was the colouring in squad, as you mentioned. Sue Whitehead was my first boss. She was brilliant. But we were more brand led, if you get what I mean. We were more brochure led. And I think, like I said earlier, we've become more measurable as an industry because you can measure it. But it is that for some people, trying to track sales is so damn difficult. Yet, if you can just use AI to scan your calls, and bear in mind, most of your sales probably do come through the phone line for most businesses, being able to see that real live data. Because even if you're going to branch, they'll remember the last call or they'll remember the last customer. They won't remember the 5, and they'll remember the worst one. They won't remember the best one. And because you're that one step removed, it was always a big frustration of mine. And that's why when I set up eSalesHub, I wanted something that's measurable, and I wanted something that was very visible, transparent to the customer, so that knew what was going on. Because, I've worked with companies before where there isn't that transparency, where, well, you're getting loads of clicks, yeah, but it's not sales, and I get paid to drive sales. I don't want clicks, or those famous emails. I can get you to number 1 of Google.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be there. So for me, it really is. You are very measurable nowadays, in marketing, and therefore, if you can measure down to sale, then you've got one hell of a bunch of ammunition in your arsenal to actually drive your marketing strategy moving forward, and also go home at night knowing you've done a damn good job.
I think as well, the purpose of this podcast is to provide value to small business owners, marketing teams who are looking to grow, and for them to come and learn about what they could be doing better, improving their practices. And actually, we're a group of business owners, everyone on this podcast, and so we are our own target audience. We're dealing with those people all the time. And actually, I think you can fall into the trap of, absolutely, revenue is my number one. Like, that's all I'm interested in at the moment is revenue. But then you do get into, in the marketing agency environment, dealing with customers, of getting tied up in all these metrics, and other things to report to them. Whereas actually, this company over here is probably just as bothered about revenue as I am. So if I can demonstrate that, is there really much value in these other tools? And, I think, well, it would be good to go around the group and just see that as well. But certainly for anyone listening, to start thinking about, if we've been through putting a marketing strategy together and all the other metrics, to actually get it down to what's important to you and how are you going to measure that one thing. I mean, Anush, what's your most important metric? What are you measuring?
My own success. First of all, of course, it's revenue. I will not lie. But the second one is seeing my customers' success, because whenever I see that they are actually succeeding by using the videos we are creating, I'm getting really, really happy. I can't say even, because it's like my own products. I'm not like putting my even higher in this case.
And what about you, Manny?
It's two ways I look at it. First, from a selfish Bobble perspective, it is revenue. How is that increasing? We have our targets for the year, but also for me, it's number of clients as well, and quality clients. I don't want to be just working with anyone. I want to be working with people that are aligned, like we've just talked about this whole podcast. Know who their audience is, know what they want to achieve out of their actual marketing goals, so that we're all both on the same page from the beginning. No matter what that is. And on the second bit is we have our own dashboards that we create for clients, and they're fully customizable. And before we set it up, we say, what is that goal that you want to achieve? Is it sales revenue? Is it number of orders? Is it number of new customers? Is it leads? Is it booking appointments, etc.? Whatever that is, that becomes the goal, because then it becomes easy for us to do our job. And for me, it's just measuring, how much is that growing for clients more month on month, and now we're delivering on the job. So 2 key things, really, revenue and the performance and results.
Brilliant. So before we wrap up, I guess, has anyone got any final questions for Mark?
Other than making me now think I've got to spend 10 minutes of my life pretty much every now looking at my results.
Every 10 minutes, not 10 minutes of your life.
Yeah, every 10 minutes.
Hey, it gets addictive. Be careful. Ruins relationships. Yeah. Ruins relationships.
No, it's been so insightful, Mark. We really appreciate you coming on. And I'd like to just give you the quick opportunity to give a little plug to eSalesHub. You know, if anyone's listening to this and they go, right, okay, so what do I do now? I'm interested. I want call tracking.
Well, we offer a free trial of 14 days to any potential client, purely because, again, it's about learning for us and actually, are you getting calls and what are those calls about? So if you log on to our website, eSaleshub.ai, click the free demo button, you can register. We can get set up literally in a couple of hours. And generally, it takes about 48 hours to actually learn what's happening about your business and where you can make improvements. But we'd be delighted to offer that to your listeners.
Amazing. I mean, I've already taken advantage of that. I've been using it and we've got some really insightful data coming through. So definitely recommend people checking it out. But yeah, I hope this episode has been really useful for our listeners. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope it sparks some conversation in terms of tools you're going to use to measure the effectiveness of your marketing. And thanks once again, Mark, for joining us. Thank you, Anush. Thank you, Manny. And we will see you all again soon. Thank you.